What about the vermin problem?
A guide to avoiding damaging business practice. Peter, what is one business practice you see, more often?
I see too many businesses that say they want help, but when you go in to try to help them, then they resist what you're trying to do, either because they really haven't committed themselves to making the changes that are necessary, or because in a lot of cases, if they're the business owner, they feel that they know their business better than anybody else, and therefore they're smarter than everybody else, and they are not willing to accept criticism or suggestions on how to make the improvements. So it's the combination of those two things, either thinking that you're smarter than everybody else or really that you're not committed to make the change. You want to do it, but for some reason there's something holding you back. But the ones that latched on, it was just developing that relationship, that trust with them, where they understood that you were really taking them into account. They were the predominant thing. It was about them and their success that was important.
For those that don't know you, can you give a little bit of, the 30-second elevator pitch, the background, where Peter came from, how you end up in Hernando County?
I was born and raised in New York City and worked for Air Products and Chemicals for a period of time, and then for Crayola Corporation for about 17 years in a variety of positions, from engineering through operations management and research and development. When I left there, I went into consulting. For 5 years, I worked through a group at Lehigh University in consulting, and then with some of the folks I worked with there, we established our own consulting practice, which I ran for 17 years in the Lehigh Valley. It was very successful. I worked with 300 plus companies. At the end of 2018, I retired from my practice and moved down here to Florida. I have a daughter and son-in-law that live in the Tampa area. I also have another child, son who lives in Alabama, about a 5-hour drive from here, and my 2 grandchildren. So we wanted to be closer to those folks and live in an area where people would want to come and visit. Well, who doesn't want to come and visit in beautiful Hernando County, where you have access to Tampa and Orlando and all the wonderful attractions?
Why a book?
I've always wanted to get advice from other people, and I appreciated the advice they gave me. Sometimes I didn't get as much as I wanted, and I thought if I could share with them some of the experiences that I had in business and where I saw companies that did very, very well and did things very, very well, and I could put that forward. But also companies that didn't do things so well, and there's such a fine line. There's a decision point. You can go one way or the other, and depending on what decision you make, could determine whether you're very successful or you're going to struggle or maybe even go out of business. So I wanted to share those viewpoints with companies and say, do the good things, make the right decisions, and you will do well, and you'll be very happy. And also, I'm not ready to retire, even though I retired.
Yeah.
So this gets my name out there.
You have a question here. It says, is your company committed to its ongoing success? That's one of your questions on Amazon. When you hear that, what goes through your mind?
Well, when I typically go into a company, one of the first things I say is, and I'm there because of a reason. There's some kind of a need, okay? Otherwise, they wouldn't even see me. If they felt everything was so wonderful, they wouldn't need to see somebody like myself.
So if they open the door, they know who you are. They know you're a business consultant. They're opening that door. Something is in the background.
There's something that's happening, even if they think that everything is perfectly okay. There's something that's gnawing at them. So the first question is, what keeps you awake at night? What bothers you that keeps you from having that peaceful night's sleep because there's something gnawing at you? And you ask that question and you get some kind of an answer. Usually people start to open up. And also you start to share experiences. You start to talk about your own experiences. And they go, well, how did you know that about us? And I go, I didn't. but I've worked with enough companies. So you start to see patterns, you see similarities, and bringing your life experiences, your business experiences in, all of a sudden you've created that bond between yourself and the other person when they go, wow, I'm not the only one that's dealing with this, and this person's dealt with this before, so if he's been able to help somebody else, he could probably help me too. I should listen to this person. Or maybe they thought they had one problem, and it turns out that it's a completely different problem. I can't tell you how many times I went into a company and they said, our production just isn't up to snuff. We're not producing right. The problem's on the factory floor. Go out and talk to the people on the factory floor. They find out they're going crazy because they just about start to work on something and they come and go, oh, we have an emergency, tear that down and set up. And so they're constantly changing over and they never get to complete what they started to work on. We find out that their information system is poor, their communication is poor. It's not what's necessarily on the factory floor. You can always improve everything, but that's not where the problem resides. It resides over here. So then all of a sudden you change your direction, because if you're working on the wrong problem,
yes, sir,
you're going to come up with the wrong answer at the end of the day.
Early, you mentioned that you as an employee, you like to promote the company, or when you used to work for a company,
yes.
The team. You don't see that often today. Any personal opinions of why employees are not promoting their workplace more often?
I think that there's been a trend towards promoting yourself. That by doing that you're going to stand out, and that's what sets you apart from everybody else. And that can be overplayed. I went to a leadership seminar at one time, and everybody was vying, not everybody because I wasn't, you could see it. They were all trying to talk first. They were all trying to self-promote. That's not what it's all about. A lot of times you have to sit and you have to listen. You have to hear what's going on and really understand what the dynamics are, what the situation is, and then you can bring forward what your advice is. But if you always have to be out front, if you always have to be the top person, but our society tends to push that.
In your Amazon page, you also talked about employee performance, encouraging employee performance.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
There's a pact that you have with your employees. They should know what their responsibilities are, and that they're going to be held accountable for what they do or what they don't do. And you need to have that understanding with them and the feedback that they're progressing the way it's expected and they're making the improvements or whatever that they're expected to do. But at the end of the day, they're held accountable for it. The thing that really sticks in my craw the most is when somebody says, well, that's not my job. If you're working for an organization and there's something that you could do, even if it's not something you do every day, that can move that organization ahead, whether it's solving a problem or whatever the case may be, and you're asked to do it, then that's your job. And every job description that I've ever written, the last line is, or anything else that your manager requests you to do.
That's a good nugget, Peter. That's a good nugget.
I think that's very important, because now you're looking out for the benefit of the organization. I work for a lot of different departments within organizations where we didn't produce the product, we didn't sell the product, but we supported them in those efforts. And if anything was going wrong, we dropped anything else we were doing in order to make sure that they were on the right track, and if they had a problem, that we could help them to solve it. That wasn't in our job description. We weren't the marketing guy. We weren't the guy on the floor who was producing the product. But if there was anything we could do to help that person or persons, that was our job. And we stopped everything else we were doing, because if they didn't get that stuff done, the company didn't move forward. And I think that gets lost sometimes. People are in silos and they say, this is my job and that's what I'm going to do and that's what I come to do every day, and don't bother me with anything else. And that's a very bad attitude, because if the company's not doing well, you're not going to do well. And the way a company's going to do well is by you doing whatever is expected of you or asked of you in order to make that happen.
What are the things that Peter looks for in a business to pinpoint if a business is doing well, to see where Peter is going to look?
Are they looking to grow? Every organization should be looking to grow. Now, they don't have to double every year, they don't have to triple every year, but they should be looking for steady growth. If they're not, that's a problem, because there's an old saying, grow or die, which is held for a variety of different things, and that's certainly true in business. Profitability, as they grow, does the profit grow according to the growth that they're experiencing? If it's not, then they're basically giving things away. Companies are not in business to not make money. If they don't make money, they're not going to be in business for very long. How they go about growing or becoming profitable, if they're constantly cutting costs, that's a very short-term fix, but it's not long-lasting. I had a boss once who said, Lee Iacocca once wrote that you can reduce costs by 10% at any time. What he didn't say was, in the continuation of that, but what damage are you going to do? Because it's true. You can cut 10% of your payroll, you can cut 10% of your benefits, but what damage does that do to the organization? At what point do you cross that line and it's not helpful anymore? In fact, it's detrimental to the organization. And the next thing is, are they committed? Will they be committed to doing whatever it takes to move them ahead? If they're not, and in a lot of cases, I'll go in and after we've had the discussions about what their problems are and so forth and all that, I'll say, are you really committed to doing this? Will you really do the things that I say? And they'll look at me like, why are you asking that? And I'll say, because quite honestly, I don't want to waste either of our times. If I spend the time, and I don't want to waste your money, if you're not willing to do it, then just keep doing what you're doing, and let's not even get involved, because you're not going to be happy at the end. I'm not going to be happy at the end. And I'll look somewhere else, because there are enough people out there who are committed or want to be committed to doing it. If you're not going to be, then let's just part company. It was nice to talk to you, and Godspeed with what you're doing. And I wish you all the best, but you're not ready for this.
Peter, I love that you say that. Recently, I would say less than a year, I started adopting a similar question because I noticed a pattern. In marketing, probably in business consulting as well, there is a lot of ambition. I want to accomplish this many things, but the reality sits in existing commitments. Sometimes they want to do things, but existing commitment and bandwidth don't allow. So I do ask that question. I give them a plethora of things that they want. Oh yeah, I want to do an event. I want to be on the radio. I want to do this. I said, with all your existing commitment and bandwidth, can you do all these? So I asked that question as well.
I had one company, it was a foundry, and the owner wanted to make changes, but the plant manager did not, and he resisted. So now we're having a review to go through what we found and what the recommendations are, and everything that we're saying, the plant manager is contradicting and fighting and carrying on. So finally I went like this, and I just folded up the book and I said, okay, I guess this is over and it's time to leave. And the owner looked at me and said, well, why are you doing that? And I said, I didn't come here to fight. I came here to help you. These are all things that we found, and we need to discuss them, because if they're not fixed, you're not gonna make the improvements that you're looking for. I said, but this is a fight. I said, and I shouldn't have to be justifying this. I've already justified it by the studies that have been done and my experience and so forth. And he says, open that book back up and let's continue. And I would say within a month or two after that, he fired the plant manager. The guy did not want to make changes. He wanted to do it his way. He wanted to be convenient, but yet there were problems in there, and he wasn't recognizing them. In fact, he was the problem.
He was the problem.
And you don't want to get into that situation with companies right from the start, where they fight with you, and again, they know better. If they know better, then they don't need you. Go out and make the changes that you need. But if you're not doing it, then you need to listen to somebody else who's there to help you. Now, not everybody helps. I mean, there are some bad consultants out there. I've run into them myself. Yeah. And you've got to make that decision. But when you see that the person is really working hard on your behalf and is concerned about the success as you are, then you should be listening to that person.
What's next for Peter? What is next for Peter?
Glad you asked that question. I finished this book, and I thought, there's more that I need to share. So I've started working on the next book, which is, to some degree, these are lessons, but the next book's going to be about the learnings that I've had, the things that through my life and through my business career I've picked up, or that people have taught me, that have shaped who I am and kind of direct what my moral compass is, what my business sense is, how I think people should or shouldn't act, and what I've seen is successful versus unsuccessful. So it's kind of taking this book and going to the next step of saying, here's the things that have influenced me, and this is why they've influenced me. And while you didn't have the same experience I did, because some of the people are passed on and are now in heaven looking down on me, but I'm going to share those thoughts with you, and hopefully that can influence you and be a help to you also, as it has been to me.
I would love to have a different conversation with you another day about publishing books. If you are, Peter, where people can find you?
Where can they find me?
Yes.
Well, I have a website, which is peterchristianbooks.com.
Yeah.
And in there, I have blogs that relate to the book, and it also talks about the book, and it talks about me. You can go on Amazon.com and you can see the book being publicized, and they also allow you to go in and view a snippet of the book, a chapter or so, where you can get a flavor for what it is. Or you can get in touch with me. If you go on the website, then there's contact information. If you're more interested, you can follow that contact information and get in touch with me, and I would love to have a conversation about where you're at and what's going on and how I might be of help to you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Angel. I appreciate